So, how do we conduct the empirical study? Now, we have made our choice, qualitative, quantitative. Usually, if it is a qualitative approach, basically, the methodology could be the case study or action research, in some rare cases, design-based research. So you will be collecting qualitative data, and this will be probably through either secondary data. Sometimes there is a lot of secondary data. I can imagine in Muntaser's case that when he will be looking into the opportunities and challenges of exporting Finnish education to the United Arab Emirates, I am sure that there is a lot of secondary data available about what are the opportunities, what are the challenges. He will be secondary data should be your first choice, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? We should first check out if there is already some available data that has been collected by someone else, because collecting data is costly, right? Collecting, doing interviews, transcribing them, analyzing them, that's costly. If there is already available data, why not use it? And sometimes, of course, especially in economics, if you are doing some economical research, there is a lot of data about countries, about many indicators about their economical situation, economical performance. So if there is available data, use it. So search first for secondary data. Now, should get this down here. I see something else than what you are seeing. Now I also get the questions from Colette. If I choose to use a single case study design, is it okay if I explain why I don't use the multiple case study design? So if you are using case study, meaning that you will deeply analyze a certain case. So whatever that case can be, it can be a company, or it can be a person, it can be anything, the case. So why wouldn't you do a multiple case study method, comparing different cases? And if you want to explain that, well, of course, that is fine. There's no problem about that. Why? More important is, why is one single case enough for you to answer your research questions? So that is the main idea. Why you think one is enough? Why wouldn't you study 2, 3, maximum 4? Because the more the cases, the more you are able to make, not generalizations, but you are able to make, let's say, reliable conclusions. So the more cases you compare, let's say you can compare similarities, what we call pattern matching. You find some patterns, similar things among those different cases. It gives you, of course, more reliable, more valid conclusions. But sometimes, doing multiple case study, it has its problems. Analyzing one case deeply is already costly. Analyzing the second case deeply is double the cost. So in that respect, you have your limitations. Here, you would be more convincing us how one case is enough for you to retrieve the reliable conclusions for your research. Can I use testimonials as secondary data for interviews? There is secondary data, yes, you can use. Now, for example, I'm interested in doing research about Silicon Valley. Okay, I'm interested to understand what are the success factors behind Silicon Valley. Now, here, my option is that there are really good videos about Silicon Valley, where top-level guys are talking about the secrets of Silicon Valley. There was this recent three-part series called Silicon Valley: The Untold Story, which came from the Finnish channel Kutonen on Mondays for the last 3 weeks. And they are available also online. When you Google them, you find those videos, and you find there all the big guys, you know, who have established multi-billion-dollar companies, their stories. You know, they are telling their stories. So I could perhaps it would cost me a lot to get to have an interview with them. So I mean, that's a valuable source. Why shouldn't we use it? He has made the video for learning purposes, but if it kind of suits what you are after, use it. So you can use. The answer to the second question is yes, you can use it. Now, some tips for the empirical study. I think we went through also some of those already. So I'm just checking. I'm just checking if anything I haven't talked about. Now, first thing is designing your questions, right? So how to design your interview questions? I assume most of you would be doing semi-structured interviews. So interviews, there are different types. Structured interviews, you are very strict. You have your, let's say, 8, 10 questions, and you just ask them and get your answers. Semi-structured interviews, you still have your structure, but you allow, via the discussion you have, you allow for emergence of new questions. So there may come out some new questions while you are already discussing with your original questions. The third type is unstructured, so you just go there and you start discussing, you don't know what to ask. So everything comes out during that. So semi-structured is perhaps the more suitable type of interviews that you should be making. And the questions that you structure before going to the interview, they should be hopefully, from your theoretical framework. Why we are doing the literature review? Because hopefully you will find a framework which will be your map in designing your interview questions. Yao Ming had very nicely the list of challenges and possible solutions from his literature review. And my suggestion to him was that when you are designing your questions, keep them in mind. But ask first, what are the challenges for implementing servitization in your company to the right people? And then the person starts saying, oh, this is challenge 1, challenge 2. And Yao Ming checks from his list that, okay, out of the 5 challenges he has, the person has mentioned only 2 of them. Then he asks, okay, what do you think about challenge number 3? It can be that the person doesn't remember. It is better that you don't start with the 5 challenges. It is better that way because the person can come up with something that's not on your list, right? So to give the open floor, it can also mean that challenge 3, 4, and 5, which are on your list, which have not been mentioned, then you remind, the person can say, no, that's not a challenge at all. So take as your guide, as your map, the theoretical framework to design your interview questions. That is also the same for the survey. So what is the purpose that you are doing? Probably if you are using the survey method, you will be testing some hypotheses. So you have already developed some hypotheses from your literature review, and you will be testing them with a sample of minimum 100 people. So when you ask your survey questions, you will be also looking at the hypothesis. So what are the variables that you are interested in? How you measure them? Those will be important in designing your survey questions. Usually, we use the Likert scale, meaning that the opinions of the respondents can be turned into numerical data by asking them, how strongly do you agree with the following? And then you ask them to rate from 1 to 5, 1 being strongly disagree, 3 being neutral, and 5 being strongly agree. So on a scale from strongly disagree to neutral to strongly agree, you see what the person will mark. So the idea in the survey is to try to turn all the data into numerical, quantitative data, which you can then analyze using statistical methods, using SPSS. So again, the variables, based on the hypotheses that you are interested in, and how to measure them will be important to decide before you make your survey questions. And when you have your questions ready, important thing is not to go start interviewing. Make a pilot interview. So the first interview that you will make is a pilot interview. And my suggestion, even before the pilot interview, send your interview questions to your supervisor. Let your supervisor check them, that are they okay or not. And also another thing to consider in your design of the interview questions is that the interview should not take more than maximum 90 minutes. And that's also important for the survey. The survey should not take more than, I would say, 10 to 15 minutes. You know, that would be even a very ambitious survey. Keep it as short as possible. In the survey, one of the important things is that you need to, people get bored and they just start marking 3 for everything. Okay, you just want to get rid of the survey. It takes your time, and you don't. Everybody is busy. You just put 3, 3, 3, 3. So one of the important things is when you are doing a survey, is to put some test questions. So you ask something in one way. So you put one sentence and you say, okay, strongly disagree 1 to 5. You have your scale. And then not the next question, but after a couple of questions on another page, you put another reverse question, checking if the person is still alive, if he's still answering logically, or is he just, putting some marks, crosses. So if you see that there are mismatches in some of the cases in your sample, then in that case, you would delete the data from that case. So that's not a reliable, that data will not be considered reliable. And also the same suggestion for the survey. This wants to die, right? So the same suggestion for the survey. When you have your survey questions, test it with some people. Send it first to your supervisor. Make some tests so that you see if they are meaningful. If you are getting meaningful results. Am I again? Let me see. Oh my God. I'm talking too much, and then this is getting frozen. No, good. So, data analysis, qualitative research. I think this is the moment you've been waiting for all day. how do we do data analysis in qualitative research? Now remember, before going into data analysis, data collection and analysis should be done hand in hand. So the wrong approach would be, okay, let me go and do my 5 interviews and then I'll start analyzing. Right? That's not the right approach. Collect your first data from your first interview, analyze immediately before you go to your second interview. I know this is idealistic. This is not always possible. Sometimes you book the interviews and they are the same day. So you just can't, analyze before going to the next interview. The advantage of doing the collection and analysis hand in hand is that, first of all, after you analyze the data from the first interview, you start thinking, okay, there are some new things that I should perhaps ask in the interview questions. So if some new things come up from your first interview, then you should ask about them in your second interview, right? So that's the first advantage. And the second advantage is, when you do it this way, when will you understand when you have collected enough data? Is it 5 interviews, 15 interviews, 10 interviews? Well, if you have made 4 interviews and you have analyzed those interviews and come up with some conclusions, and when you make your 5th interview and you get nothing new, that means that, okay, it's time that you have collected enough data. And of course, depending on your questions, there can be different people who can be answering rightly to different parts of your questions, right? Some person can be expert on the operations, other one can be expert on projects. So make sure that you cover people from all the related departments, areas that can give you, who can give you the valuable information. Okay, so those tips in mind, now it's time to look at how we will analyze the data. Here I have my data. I have collected the data and I have transcribed it, and it's here all in the text. Okay, so now I'm going to start analyzing it. How do I do? Let's have a look. I will be using Excel and Word. And basically, I will be using Excel. And the method that you will be using, most probably, is coding. So you will be using codes to analyze your data. Now, the first thing, you can do it on paper. You can do it on the Word. The first thing that you will be doing is called data reduction. So looking at your data, not everything during the interview is relevant for answering your research questions. Well, the interview, we can talk about other things. So the first thing that you need to do is to reduce this data to only those parts that are relevant. And in doing that, in finding out what is relevant, we will be using codes. So let us assume that, let's go with the thesis questions of Yao Ming. I made one example here already for you. Research question 1, what are the key challenges, barriers behind servitization, implementing servitization in B2B context? Okay, that's research question 1. Research question 2, what are the solutions, or how can the managers overcome these challenges? Okay, now I start making in my Excel sheet one workbook with the code. So codes C1, that stands for challenge 1. C2, challenge 2, C3, C4. So these come from where? Where do those codes come from? They come from my theoretical framework, right? So Yao Ming has a theoretical framework with 25 challenges, right? So he will have codes from C1 to C25, and then in this explanation, it will not be challenge 1, it will be the exact name of the challenge. Okay? I just made here example challenge 1. So whatever the challenge is, he will write here that. And then again, coming from his theoretical framework, okay, for challenge 1, literature offered two solutions, S1A, S1B. That's solution A for challenge 1, solution B for challenge 1. Okay? For challenge 2, S2A, S2B, S3A, S3B, S4A, S4B. Okay, this is my list of codes for the challenges and for the solutions. Now, Yao Ming takes his Word document in print or on the spreadsheet, and he starts reading it through. And then he finds something. Oh, this is about challenge 3. Very good. He marks it if it's on paper and puts there C3. He reads, he finds something about, oh, this is about solution 1A, S1A, S1B, etc., etc. So he does the analysis using the codes, going through the whole set of documents. Elena had 59 pages, right? So anything until 100 pages, if you don't have thousands of pages, doing it on Excel is enough. You don't need to use NVivo or Atlas, whatever. Well, if you want to use it, it's up to you, but Excel is good enough. At the end, it's the analysis you do in the brain. So the software will not do the analysis for you. It will help you to see things better, to connect things better, but still you'll do it here. So you go through these, and all of a sudden Yao Ming also notices that, oh, there is here some solution for challenge 1, but it's neither solution 1A nor solution 1B. He will put here another code, solution 1C, that's solution C for challenge 1. Now, this is important, that what comes from the data, which does not come from the literature, because that will be your contribution to the literature. You found one solution, what was not mentioned in the literature before. So it's good to keep the codes for the data, for the challenges or solutions which come from the data separately here, because then when at the last chapter you assess your findings in the light of earlier literature, you can easily say, okay, some of the challenges and solutions from literature were confirmed, but I also found out new solutions for challenge 1, for example. So then you can easily write in the discussion chapter. So this is the start. And now he has marked everything, every line. Some places that are not marked, they will be removed. So what we did here is the first step, data reduction. We reduced the data, we took the data that will be useful for analysis, and the other data that is eliminated. So now here I have the second worksheet called analysis. What I do there is I will be in every row, so the first column it's code. The second column, that's the text from the data sheet. Third column, location of the text. And the fourth column, that is your analysis, that is your comments. Now, what I do here is for every row, everything I marked in the Word document, I'll just copy paste here. So I go through the whole document. So what I have done, I have marked C1. The text is here. Well, it is interview 1, page 5. Putting the location may be important because sometimes, afterwards, when you put all the data into your Excel file, you may not remember, you see the one sentence there, you may not remember what it was about. So if you need to go back to the original document, this will help you to note where you took it from. So you do the whole exercise, you copy paste everything to your Excel. What's the good thing about it? You apply filters. So what you do is from data, let's take away the filters. So now we use let's take it away. We use the filter function. Now what I can do is that I'm going to start my analysis. So I'll start my analysis from challenge 1. So if I had only this paper, I would be reading through, trying to find out all what has been said about challenge 1, right? So what I now do here is I filter C1 from my codes, and that brings me everything from your transcribed documents about challenge 1. Then you start to make your analysis. You read what has been said about challenge 1, and then you make your analysis in column D. Okay? So this is the basic logic, which helps you in a systematic way that you properly make data analysis for qualitative data. Okay? And when I said that when you are writing your data analysis subchapter in the methodology chapter, it could be good to provide as an appendix one screenshot of your analyzed data. So do not provide that before you have made your analysis. So when you have made your analysis and we see some text in the analysis comments column, then take some sample 1 page and then put it to your appendix and mention in your data analysis how you made the analysis, and refer to appendix, let's say 2. If appendix 1 is your interview questions, refer to appendix 2 that this is done in this way, as an example. That's about analyzing qualitative data. I'm assuming that you will be all doing qualitative data analysis. So hopefully this will be good for you in the analysis. Now, if it happens to be that somebody is going to do a quantitative data collection and analysis, remember, from reliability perspectives, what you are doing is, okay, if you are testing about Finnish people. Now in Finland, we have 5+ million Finns, so you cannot make a survey with all of them, right? So that is the population. What we do is we take a sample and we try to get some hypothesis testings with certain significance, levels of significance from that sample. So the larger the sample, the better, the more reliable your results will be. Sometimes we hear on the news some surveys about political parties. So, okay, this political party, especially before elections, they make some polls and they say, okay, now the situation is like this. How reliable are they? When we have the election results, we get some different scenarios. So Of course, making a sample of, let's say, from a 5 million people, if you are making your conclusions from a sample of 100, you are not likely to have the exact conclusions, right? There will be some deviances from the actual results. So that is, of course, acceptable. But of course, on the other hand, you cannot make the survey with 5 million people. That's very costly. So you need to select a reasonable sample size, and that should be minimum 100. Anything below 100, especially if the number of variables increase, wouldn't give you any reliable results. The choice of the sample. Now, if you are interested in, let's say, if you are interested in making a hypothesis about the influence of gender on something, then make sure that in your sample there are enough representatives from both genders, right? So don't make your survey in an engineering school, right? So, if you are interested in testing the impact of income level of the households on something, then don't make your survey with students at Young. They will probably be having similar income levels. So you should have enough representatives from the populations which you are going to be testing in your quantitative analysis. Now, at YAMC, we have this WebRopol electronic survey system. Usually, students can use that as well. So the electronic system, that's handy, because once you get the data into WebRopol, it automatically can convert it into Excel, into SPSS. So that relieves your work. And the problem there in data collection is getting people to respond. So you get all kinds of requests, survey requests. So how do you get people to answer? The so-called response rates are not very high in general. Usually, to increase the response rate, you may want to offer some rewards, some incentives. Okay, you may offer some iPhone among the respondents. You can make a draw and have one iPhone for 3 persons. Well, I don't think any of you is interested to make that kind of an offer. I can see.
He's not sponsoring.
No sponsors, no iPhones. Okay, so I can read it from your faces, and the best you can offer is that you share the results. That's also an incentive. So if the person who receives the email with a nice cover letter telling that this will not take more than 5 minutes, if you write there that this will take about 1 hour, I tell you nobody will respond. So you need to make sure that the surveys should not take more than, I would say, maximum 15 minutes, even 15 minutes, because I think about it when that kind of request comes. If it's 5 minutes, I'm more likely to start. If it's 15 minutes, I think twice. So keep your surveys short, to the point, and write it also in the cover letter that tell the objective, try to motivate the person to respond, tell the objective why it is important, and then also mention that this won't take more than 5 minutes. So then maybe they can start, and of course, let them share their emails if they are interested to receive the results. So once you make your analysis, then with those who are interested, you may share your results. So how do we analyze the quantitative data? So let's say we made a survey and we collected from a sample of 300 people, we have some data, okay? So how do we start using it? Now, first thing, we should check for the reliability of the data. In doing that, you would be looking at, okay, is there, you see that immediately, are there some cases, we call them cases, each person who has each respondent. So in a sample, we have the cases. So have the cases responded correctly? So if you see one who has said 3 for everything, you know, what is your opinion about this? 3, 3, 3, just delete that case. And then we said that we make test questions, right? So you check your test questions. Are there some who have, you know, failed in those test questions? Delete them as well. Are there some outliers? There is one guy who has put 1s and 5s, you know, everywhere. You know, some outliers that can also be deleted. So this is also data reduction. You know, you get rid of the unreliable data. Then usually you should be presenting so-called descriptive statistics. Okay, descriptive statistics related to your sample. So when we mean by descriptive statistics, that is for the variables that you have used, that you have measured in your analysis, what are the means, what are the standard deviations or percentages. So now if we are talking about, okay, what is the age of the sample? So for age, you can say mean is 34 and standard deviation 4. Okay, but then if you are looking at another variable which you have measured with categorical data. So if we think about gender, you don't say gender mean 0.5, standard deviation 0.2. That's not how you present categorical data. There you would be saying, okay, 45% and 55%, right? So use percentages for categorical data. So this is descriptive statistics. You should always, whatever you do, you should first provide the descriptive statistics of your sample. If you are doing any regression, so you want to, for example, understand the impact of a number of independent variables on some certain dependent variable. Let's say the decision, the consumer's decision to purchase. What effects on that? So you have your independent variables and you have your dependent variable, and you want to run some multivariate regression. In that case, you would be first checking whether your independent variables are really independent, or is there some correlation among them. So you have a correlation matrix where you show all the correlations between each two independent and also the dependent variable. If you notice high correlations among some of your independent variables, that will disturb the results of your analysis, regression analysis. You should be then considering to remove the variables which highly correlate with other independent variables. Well, I think perhaps I should stop here about the analysis on quantitative data. If you happen to have any questions, or if you have, if you are doing quantitative research, which at least I know you are not, then just contact me, or you can contact your teacher from the quantitative research methods course to tell you about, to tell you more in detail about it. I just wanted to go through some basics. And I think I will be leaving it here. Any questions? So I think
yes, maybe related to this this tables.
yes.
If we haven't happened not found new solutions,
No new solution. So you make your
only the
analysis, and it happens to be that there's nothing new coming, and everything you have, it's confirming what has been said. So the good news is that you are not doing. So the question was, if you don't find any new solutions or anything new from your data collection, data analysis, am I in trouble? You are not in trouble, luckily, because you are not aiming for a doctoral thesis. So if nothing new is coming, in that respect, you just presented that in comparison to earlier research, your findings confirm what earlier research have been suggesting. So it would be equally enough that you end up just reviewing the literature. And that's actually the reality, You think that you are finding something new. Usually most of the things are already in the literature. Just by reading, you'll get wiser. You don't need to do empirical research. That's true. There is a lot of information, knowledge that is somewhere there. That when you think about solving a problem at your company, indeed the literature will tell you the answers. It happens, that you don't find anything new. I think I have one question also here. Let's have a look. So is coding the same as content analysis? So yes, so what you are doing is content analysis using the technique of coding. So what you are doing as a method, so this is the content that you see, the content from your interview. So you are analyzing the content. It's called content analysis. And in doing the analysis, you use the technique of coding. So they are complementary to each other. Now, you may be tired, but what I am going to do, and what I forgot to do actually at the end of the previous session, I would like to take you through two theses. One is a qualitative research, the other is a quantitative research. And I would like to take you through their, very briefly, methodology chapters, highlighting what are the good things, what are not so good things. So under your, I think there is one more comment. Let's have a look at that before we continue. Yes. So under that, we have the sample thesis. I will be looking at, as an example from our qualitative research, the thesis of Nina Poronen. So this is a thesis about, I think we have covered the introduction and literature review chapters of this thesis. So we'll be covering all the chapters. And if you remember, this is about enabling bioeconomy related new business development in central Finland. So if we go to, I think this doesn't go there. If we go to the methodology chapter, so the chapter, I think, starts nicely by telling us what the purpose of the research is. So the purpose of the research actually defines, the research questions define your choices regarding methodology. So it may be a good place to remind us about the purpose. And then here, she is also reminding us that she will be using the gap model in identifying, so this is the theoretical framework that she will be using in answering her research question. Now, this is a critical place. 3.1, research philosophy. I haven't told you anything about philosophies, right? In the methodology chapter. So, to the extent possible, avoid going into any philosophy discussions. That would be perhaps suitable at the doctoral level, but for your level, don't get into philosophical discussions. And what I perhaps, you may get into it, that's my suggestion. I don't say don't get into, but it's only a suggestion. But then what I notice here is that this is how many? It's not even, it's a short paragraph, right? So 3.1 is 6 lines and then 10 lines. So my general suggestion, as you will recall, is that don't open a section for short paragraph. So if you open a section, make sure that it lasts 1.5, 2 pages. Okay? So in that respect, this is also quite a short section. Then we hear about the research approach that is in 3.2. So she will be using qualitative approach, case study methodology, and then here in this paragraph, we hear why it was decided to do the qualitative approach. So in this paragraph up there, she's explaining nicely why it suits better for that research. And then we see here, what I like is that she's using different methodology sources in synthesizing her literature, her methodology chapter. So we see here Kovalainen and Eriksson, Simons. There is a bit bias towards this Kovalainen and Eriksson, as we will see. She is using it more often than the others, but still there is the variety. And then, of course, if you are going to do case study, Robert Yin is kind of the father of the methodology, so you should be referring to him. Kathleen Eisenhardt, that is also a famous name in case study methodology, so those could be used. And then she's moving into data collection and data analysis. Now, one thing related to citations, I think overall she's been quite well using those, but one thing perhaps is the lack of use of IBID. So I mentioned that she's using a bit heavily this Eriksson and Kovalainen. So here, for example, she could be using IBID as the previous one has also been the same citation. She's explaining here very well about how she has been collecting the data. I think those of you who are going to be doing qualitative research, so Appendix 2 shows list of persons interviewed. I don't know why that is appendix 2. It could be appendix 1 because then interview questions, they are presented in appendix 1. So she's telling us about how she has designed here the interview questions. So an outline for an interview consisted of themes and how she has chosen those themes, what themes have been. So she's describing the design of the interview questions. That's very nice. Then we see about how long the interviews have been. So the interviews varied from 22 minutes to 1 hour and 11 minutes. So she gives us in detail about the interviews. And then she's telling us which language the interviews were carried out. They were carried out in Finnish. It was the native language of her and the interviewees. So very nicely telling us. And then she is telling us about data analysis. And Colette, here is your content analysis. So she has chosen content analysis as the main analysis method. So you can be referring to this Myers as a potential literature to check about how to do content analysis. And actually, this is a good paragraph. I like this. There are 3 types of content analysis: content-based, theory-based, and theory-assisted. And it describes what are the differences. And she is using the theory-assisted content analysis. So we said that when we are making the codes, they are coming from your theoretical framework. So that is theory-assisted, right? So this is a good paragraph for you to take into consideration. But having said that, don't rewrite it in your own words. Just read it, get the idea, check also the original sources about what is content analysis. And then we see here that she's also, there is the procedure, and then she's telling us about what she has done with the recorded data. It has been transcribed. 9 hours of recorded data, about 100 pages of transcribed text. So this is where you describe basically how you collected data and how you analyzed the data. And then she's been using Excel. So following the way that I described to you, and she's giving examples of how she has analyzed the data. So there are some extracts from the Excel sheets about the data analysis. Now, finally comes the section on verification of the results. So remember, internal validity, external validity, reliability, and objectivity. She describes here how things should be done. There is quite a nice section on how it should be done. But in this section, what I missed especially, what has she done in her research to ensure reliability and validity? That was a bit missing. Otherwise, very good subchapter on reliability and validity issues, referring to appropriate sources. But then I kind of missed, okay, what has she done? to make sure that her answers, her findings are reliable and valid. Now, there was one section that was missing here, right? Which section was missing? Who will remember? Oh, it's writing there, the research context.
Coding,
Right? Sorry?
like that, the coding.
No, the research context. So here, what she has done is that she has opened a separate chapter for the research context, which is Central Finland. Remember, the topic of this is enabling bioeconomy-related new business development in Central Finland. Research context is Central Finland. And of course, bioeconomy. So if you look at her contents, table of contents, the research context is not under methodology. It's a separate chapter called chapter 4. And there she has quite a long research context, right? 13 pages, starting page 53, ending on page 65. So there she has told about the bioeconomy of Central Finland, regional programs, projects, and studies related to that. So she has a very extensive, putting that into the methodology chapter would not be appropriate. That's how she has taught, and she has made a separate chapter on that. Okay? That's extra, that's, is it needed to have this kind of a long section on research context? Maybe, maybe not. Of course, it gives additional value to know about the research context in detail, but it's enough if you keep it under the methodology chapter that you don't go into details.
But does it then mean that those people that she interviewed, they have to be within this research context? That they, she interviewed 11 or how many?
14.
14. So they
More
fall
than
in
10.
all of those contexts. Some of
So they should cover, those people should cover
all this.
different areas that are, and actually that is a bit the problematic side of her thesis, is that she has quite a diverse set of research questions. So if you look here, she has this main research question: how can new business development be enabled? And then under that, there are 4 sub-questions. So this is actually quite broad. So the people that she chooses, she has interviewed 10 plus people, should cover all those areas to give her the right answers. Let me see. There are some things in the chat area. Okay. So you can also see it. The thesis is available for everyone. You can, if you need to look further into it, it's among the sample thesis here. Okay, last but not the least, let's have a look also very shortly into the thesis of Johanna, which is a quantitative, which has pursued a quantitative approach. So the question she has is, how can companies increase the online trust of potential customers? Think about the online businesses, banking. Would you trust to share your credit card number in an e-commerce transaction with any website? How much do you trust it? And how can companies increase the online trust? So that is the research question.
See you next time.
Thank you. See you. Now, let's have a look at her methodology chapter. Let's go there. she has found her theoretical framework. So these are according to her the factors that improve trust in the online environment. So she has her theoretical framework, and then she will be using a survey method to test the impact of those different variables on the consumers' behaviors. So she is telling us about what she has used, she has made. So this is also one way. Convenience sampling means how conveniently you can easily get the get the data. So when you send it to your friends, the possibility of getting a response may be higher than if you send it to somebody else. Okay. So she's telling us also that she has piloted the survey. So using the steps, she has made a pilot, and then she has got out of 300, 131 answers, which is quite a good number, for a quantitative study. It's quite good. Now here she starts with the overall research strategy. She's telling that she's used a quantitative survey, and she's telling us why she's doing online survey. Of course, survey you can do also other ways, right? You can go to, let's say, in front of Sokos, you can have on paper, probably you have met such people, that you can ask the questions and fill in there. That could also be one way. So it doesn't need to be online. Perhaps when you are face to face, the likelihood that you will get the answers in 5 minutes is higher. So there is the personal connection that you build, the trust that you build, that can get you the answers. So why online survey she has made, that is explained here. And then why she has used WebRopoll, that is also explained here, that it's the official survey tool of YAM. Okay. And then she's also telling us about some things shortly about to ensure validity, what she has done. So she has used these test questions. Reversed phrasing was used in question number 19. So she has used some test questions to check, and she has also used IP tracking system that the same person doesn't make 2 or 5. If somebody wants to sabotage, they can make 10. So have the answers come from different IP numbers. So she has been tracking that as well. And then she's telling us about the variables. There is a figure which shows us the list of the variables and the questions. Well, this is a bit kind of confusing, this table over here. I make it a bit smaller. Didn't help much. So there is this table over here. There is y1, y2, x1, x2, and then continuing with x3, x4, and then the questions, the z's. This is a bit confusing. What I like is usually a nice table. What is the variable? name of the variable. Type of the variable, is it numerical or categorical? And then measure. How do you measure the variable? So what did you use to measure the variable? So if it is Likert scale, 1 to 5, you say 1, this, 2, this, strong disagree, strong agree, 1 to 5. So a basic table rather than a figure would fit much better here. I find this a bit confusing. You know, what is this Z? What is this X? It's a bit challenging as a reader to see. Then we have data collection. As I mentioned, she's mentioning about this convenience sampling via Facebook that she has been sending to 300 friends. So are they the right people to give the answers for this? Maybe, or if they are online shopping or not shopping. You know, if they have Facebook, so of course now trust online shopping, okay? The person, the respondent, should be using computer or internet, right? I mean, if you go and do this survey with your grandmother who doesn't use the computer, well, it's not the right person, right? I mean, if whatever answer she will give you, she will never go to buy anything on the internet, right? So you should be doing it with the right people. So her friends, we don't know who they are, but probably if they are using Facebook, that they are using the internet. So that much we can think that they can be the right people. But it could be that they are, you know, all making e-commerce, so the answers can be biased. So we should also get those who are not doing e-commerce. So using Facebook today, maybe they are all biased people. So we don't know that. Okay, and then she's telling us about the data analysis, how she has. So the data collection could be a bit longer. So here we see only a paragraph again. That's unfortunately, that could be a bit longer. Data analysis, that is also a bit short. That's 2 paragraphs. So 1 long, 1 short paragraph. And then perhaps the longest part of this chapter is the verification of findings. Overall, her chapter, starting on page 36 and ending on page 33, so it is like 7.5 pages. It's okay, but it's a bit brief in data collection and data analysis. It could be described. A bit more in detail. So these were 2 examples, and I suggest that, especially as you are in qualitative research, you could benefit definitely from the methodology chapter of Nina Poronen. And I hope that you also have an idea about how you will collect and analyze your data. You'll be starting with your interview questions, designing them based on your theoretical framework, and then you'll be validating it with piloting with your supervisor, and then your first interviewee will be the real pilot. Data collection and analysis will go hand in hand. Make 1 interview, analyze it, make the second interview, analyze it, and go further until you get no new information. And until you think that you have covered all the relevant parts of the theoretical framework. Well, thanks for being with us today. Hopefully you got something. So next time we will be meeting on March the 14th. So hopefully I will be looking, we will have some topics. We'll be looking, getting into the results chapter. And at the same time, I hope to have some session that you may perhaps present some of the things that you have accomplished. Okay, have a nice evening. I will be, the recorded videos will be available as they have been available in their sections. So if you see here, there will be the video available. There's here the video available. You can watch the video here. So under this Feb 7 seminar, to the related places, I will add the videos of today's sessions. Okay, have a nice evening. Bye.